Whether we're talking about classics like the Stinky Cheese Man, terrifying hauntings like the boy who comes home to hear a voice that has no body attached to it, or the secrets that are waiting for you on the 13th floor of a haunted house, we're going to touch all of these horror stories with today's list of top 10 creepy bedtime stories that shouldn't be for kids. Coming in at number 10, we have The Stinky Cheese Man. Honestly, this is one of the best books ever written, but I don't know if it should be for kids. Basically, it's a series of children's stories that are known to be famous fairy tales, but they have been reworked to be very strange. Now, I loved this book when I was a kid, but that could be why I'm so weird now. You could read this book to your kid, but they might end up like me. The main story of this book is called The Stinky Cheese Man. It was basically the story of a gingerbread man, but instead of people trying to chase him down to eat him, they can't stand the smell of him because he's made of the stinkiest cheese, so he thinks everyone is trying to chase him down and eat him, but in reality, no one can stand him. It's the perfect representation of someone who thinks they're great, but has no idea what's going on in the real world. The one I remember the most of the Stinky Cheese Man versions was the Ugly Duckling. The Ugly Duckling, if you guys know that story, starts out as an ugly duckling, grows up to be a beautiful swan. In the Stinky Cheese Man version, starts out as an ugly duckling, and then he grows up, and it turns out he was just an ugly duck. I remember that one so vividly because my mom would read it and she couldn't finish reading it because the last line when it says, turns out he was just ugly, she would laugh so hard. She'd be like, and she could never finish the story because she thought it was the funniest thing on the planet.
Coming in at number 9 is Under the Bed. You best believe if someone told me this story when I was small, I would have gone and slept in between my parents. I don't even care. I did that till an extremely old age, which I will not say, 12. You get scared sometimes. I don't know what to tell you. Now, as the story goes, a young boy is just sleeping in his bed when he hears footsteps outside his door. Thinking he could be either a serial killer or just a random creak, he peeks at the door before it swings open. As the door opens, it reveals a crazed serial killer holding the dead bodies of both the boy's parents. Terrified and frozen watching him, the man put the parents on a chair and got some blood on his hands and wrote something on the wall. Now, thinking the boy is asleep, the murderer hides under the bed. The boy at this point has probably peed and shat at this point and silently probably crying his eyes out, and just every orifice on his body is, releasing. Now, it's too dark for him to read what the man wrote, so he just pretends he's asleep and lays as still as possible. Just imagine it's dead silent and the boy can just hear the killer breathing underneath him. An hour passes and eventually his eyes are adjusting to the light and he finally makes out what the man wrote. Just as he hears a noise from under the bed, he reads the words, "I know you're awake." Death.
Coming in at number 8, we have El Coco. This story has many names. Every culture has their version of El Coco. It's basically the boogeyman. Now, while most people wouldn't dream of telling their kid this kid's story in this day and age, it used to be a very classic story for kids. You would tell your child some sort of horrific tale about some beast that would steal them away if they misbehave, and then say goodnight. This would scare your kid into behaving. I mean, it's a tactic that probably worked, but the long-lasting mental stress you'd be putting on that kid would be some trauma that they would never get over and would probably stretch into the rest of their life. They would grow up very angry and never know that it was because of the story of El Coco that is actually floating around in the back of their head. You know, when I was a kid, I thought the boogeyman was a dude who danced really well but was also scary. That's why they called him the boogeyman. So I would picture this demonic beast grooving in my closet. I thought he would burst out to disco music and then take me down to this underground dance club where he would eat me alive.
Filling on number 7 slot is The Smell. Once upon a time, as it always is once upon a time, there was a married couple that fought a lot. They were just starting to talk about getting divorced when the wife found out she was pregnant, and so the couple decided to stay together for the baby. Honey, even those marriages never work out. Never stay together just for the baby. But by the time the boy turned 5, the couple were fighting non-stop and was bad. One night the fight got really bad and the dad was so angry he choked his wife to death. In a panic, he quickly took the body to the boot of the car before the son could wake up and find out that his dad has murdered his mom. He got to a swamp, kind of piggybacked the body over his shoulder and then threw it into the gross ass swamp. It smells horrible, and because he had been in the water, the husband also stank like When he got home, he showered straight away, but the stench stayed. Days passed and the smell wouldn't go away, and the boy kept asking where his mum was. Eventually the dad said she was staying with relatives, and that was the end of that. But then anytime he would approach his son, the boy would be terrified, backing away if the dad ever stepped close to him. One night he asked him if there was something he wanted to say to him about his mother, and the boy replied, "Why is mommy's face so pale?" The dad was like, "What do you mean?" And the boy answered, "Why do you give her a piggyback every day?" Damn, so the boy can see the mom. Nope.
Anyways, next one is number 6, the Ouija Board. It should be no surprise that there's a spooky bedtime story that involves a Ouija board. In fact, this would be something I would tell my imaginary kids if I ever had them. They need to learn from an early age that if you mess around with spooky things, bad stuff will happen. I don't need my kids bringing that kind of bad energy into my life. Well, this story follows along a group of kids who got the bright idea of using a Ouija board to try and talk to some dead people, and then things go terribly wrong. Everyone gets cursed, and one by one each one of the kids dies off because of some horrible demonic force that kills them. Honestly, the whole thing sounds like a bad time. But why would you tell this story to kids? Well, back in the early 20th century, the fear of the occult was much more serious than it is now. Now when you say the occult, you think about a few girls sitting around a circle with some crystals and a birth chart. But back then, you thought the devil himself was going to use his followers to breed a dark army. So this story would envelop kids with fear so they would stay far away from the dark arts.
Coming in at number 5 is The Voice. It's always the big houses that end up scarring kids for life. Now when this kid was young, his family moved into a 2-story house, which was honestly a bit of a maze. Both his parents worked, which meant he'd often come home from school to an empty house, which is scary as a kid. I remember that happened to me for a period while my sisters were in uni, and I was scared home alone every single day. I would just be like cocooned in the blanket and just wait there until somebody got home. Either way, one evening he came home after being at a friend's and the house was dark. He called out for his mum and he heard her response from upstairs, so obviously he went running upstairs to find her. He called out for her again and heard her say yes, so he narrowed it down to one of the rooms on the far right side of the house. The kid was still a bit scared, but he knew as soon as he saw his mum he'd feel safe, so he rushed to the room, and just as he was about to open it, the front door opened. He heard his mum shout, "Sweetie, are you home?" Which is like, okay, if that's my mum, who the hell answered me in this room? The boy immediately let go of the door handle and ran down the stairs. As he was going down, he looked back briefly and saw something staring at him from the crack of the door that was open. Note to self, just don't open that door ever.
Coming in at number 4, we have the Lorax. This is a Dr. Seuss story that I would get read all the time as I was going to sleep. If you don't know the whole story of the Lorax, it's that of a forest dweller who used to live in a lush green world that was covered by nature, and then slowly but surely the entire forest is torn down and all that is left is smog and rot. Everything that used to be green and healthy is now dead, and the story is a warning to everyone that we should stop destroying the environment or it's going to get eaten up faster than Joey Chestnut chomps down a meal. Now, on second thought, even though this story seems too real now and very frightening, it probably should be told to all children so they learn that we need to take better care of the planet, or we're going to have to start eating each other like Joey Chestnut eats any food product.
At number 3 slot is the Keyhole. We've all had variations of this scary story as kids, but I always thought it was super creepy. So this man's flight lands quite late, and so he drives to this tiny hotel a few miles outside of Kiev. He tells the concierge he wants to book a room, and she does all the admin stuff and gives him the key and the room number. Now just as he's picking up his luggage to go up, she tells him, "But one more thing, comrade. There's one room without a number, and it's always locked. Don't even peek in there." Too tired to even take her warning seriously, the guy shrugged it off and went to his room. He passes the hell out but is awoken in the middle of the night by the sound of a running tap. But hella annoyed, he follows the sound and realizes it's coming from the room opposite his, which is the one the concierge warned him about. He starts pounding on the door to try and get the person to stop, but no one answers. The man then looks into the keyhole and sees nothing but red. The water's still going, and so he's had enough. The flight was long enough, he's been through enough So he goes downstairs and complains to the concierge. After finishing, he asks, by the way, who is in that room? And that's when the truth finally came out. She explained how there was a couple that used to board that room, but the husband ended up murdering his wife. She was a pale white beauty, but her eyes were always fully red. I don't know, but you know what you just saw in the keyhole is his eye.
Coming in at number 2, we have the 13th floor. I mean, it's almost Halloween, so it should be no surprise that we have a good Halloween story for you. The bedtime story of the 13th floor is one where a couple of kids go to a haunted house that is an entire apartment building. Each floor is more spooky than the last. The two kids keep climbing higher and higher, but they are warned that you should not go to the 13th floor. Whatever horrors are waiting for you up there, they are too intense for someone to handle. Well, they manage to work their way up and they're at the doorway of the 13th floor. One of the two kids is too scared and turns back, but the other one marches on alone. The next day at school, the one kid who turned back is looking everywhere for their friend, but they can't find them. Eventually they ask someone, "Do you know where Matt is?" And they respond, "Who's Matt?" They ask a few more people, but no one remembers Matt, as if they were erased from history.
And finally, at number 1 is the ribbon. I love ribbon stories. There's so many variations of this one. One of them actually includes the pirate Blackbeard, but this is not the one I'm talking about. Not long ago, a pretty girl went to school and she had a lovely green ribbon tied around her neck. At school, she made a friend called Jim who sat behind her in class. He noticed the ribbon pretty quickly and casually asked her why she wears the ribbon around her neck, and her reply was quite vague. All she said was, "Someday I'll tell you." Now years went by and the tweens turned into teens, and Jim asked her out on a coffee date. The date went obviously great since they'd been friends for years now, and again Jim asked her about the ribbon, and this time she said, "Well, maybe if we ever get married, I'll tell you." Fast forward many years, you can well imagine what happened. The two got married, were happier than ever, and again he asks, "We're married now, why do you wear that ribbon on your neck?" And she says, "I'll tell you if we ever have kids." At this point I would be like, "Are you cheating on me? Why are you not telling me about this? I've literally married you." Years later they have a baby girl and boy, and again he asks her, and all she said is, "If you love me, you'll drop it for now. Someday I'll tell you." All Jim knew was this girl. She was his life and he loved her more than anything, so he just stopped asking. The duo finally grew old together, and when at last his wife was on her deathbed, he asked, "Please tell me now, why do you have that ribbon around your neck?" And with her last breath she said, "Okay, I'll tell you, take it off now." And he did, and as soon as the bow was loose, her full-on head fell off. Anyway guys, that was it. See, it just doesn't seem as climactic as yours, because yours like, "This is me!" Anyway guys, let us know what you thought in the comments below. Would you read any of these stories to your children? Probably not. Anywho, I've been your host for this one, Eamon Hassan.
And I've been Jada Reyna. Bye!
Bye!
Stay for bloopers!
You said it all, buddy!
Yep.
Terrified and frozen watching him, the man put the parents on a chair. Oh, sorry, I just had pad thai.
Now, while most people wouldn't dream of telling their kid this story but the long-lasting mental stress you'd be putting on that kid would be,
Hella annoyed, he follows the sound and realizes it's coming from the room opposite his, the one the concierge warned him about. Sorry. No!
Anyways, guys.
He's literally not joking.
That's it.
No, you did the intro. Oh. You literally talked for the whole of the intro.
Okay, go do it.
Did I spit on you? I'm sorry. Did I spit on you?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Oh, okay.